Welcome to It's Your Life with host Joyce Wheeler, who will empower you to live a happy, healthy, natural life.
You're listening to Haggy Shack Radio at haggyshack.com.
Welcome, everyone. Today is Friday, June 10th, 2016. This is It's Your Life, Live It to the Fullest. I'm your host, Joyce Wheeler. You are listening to Haggy Shack Radio and Wolf Spirit Radio. Please remember that we're listener-sponsored. Click that donate button and show us some love. Tonight I'm here with Damian Keller. He is a published author, certified sound and recording engineer, certified tuning fork therapist, and energy healing practitioner of multiple systems, including Reiki. He teaches a certification course on sound therapy, accredited by the World Metaphysical Association and the American Council of Holistic Healers. He utilizes a cosmic keyboard, solar spectrum, and the law of the octaves, sessions including vibroacoustic therapy with a low frequency, transducer system, brainwave entertainment with EEG readings, and chromotherapy sessions provide a therapeutic and relaxing sound massage for your mind, body, and spirit. Welcome, Damian.
Hi, thanks for having me. Sorry, that was a lot of big words there at once.
I muddled through it, I think, pretty much okay. Did I do all right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I'm so glad that you agreed to be on the show. I'm very interested in what you do with the frequencies and with sound.
Thanks for having me.
Why don't we start out with letting our audience get to know you a little bit better, and can you tell us where you're from?
I'm originally from Omaha, Nebraska. I relocated to Chicago in 1994, and recently, in the past couple of weeks, just relocated back to Omaha.
Okay. So, do you have any siblings?
Yes, I have one sister, Raina, and one brother, Chris. Raina's in Omaha, and I have a nephew, Dante, and my brother, Chris, is in North Carolina.
So kind of everybody's kind of spread out a little bit there, huh?
Oh, yeah.
All right, so why don't you tell us a little bit about your upbringing as far as, your home life and schooling and, being that you are into sound, how did your parents feel about this? Is this something that you were always into?
Yeah, they always supported me in music. My dad's a musician and started teaching me drums at a very young age, probably before I was even in school. And there were always pianos and guitars around the house, and Mom always encouraged it. They split when I was real young, but I always saw my dad on the weekends, and during the week I got to use his drum set, so I always had that to practice with. And between him teaching me and a few friends of the family, John LeMay, once I was more in high school, John LeMay, who used to play with Taj Mahal, actually taught me a little bit on guitar when I first started learning that. And but yeah, I took bass and guitar in high school and kind of self-taught myself keyboards. I'm not the best at it, but dabbled in other instruments like horns, and of course I DJ'd for a while and electronic stuff like theremins as well, old Moogs.
So why don't you share a little bit? We had talked the other day quite extensively, and you had talked about how you got into like the sound thing.
Well, when I graduated high school, I was playing in bands, and I ended up going to school to be certified as a sound engineer for recording and live music because I was sick of arguing with sound men at my shows. And so I had always been recording here and there in small home studios around town anyway, so just wanted to learn mic placement and EQ and all that kind of stuff and the technology of it all. So I did that, and after moving to Chicago, I continued to play in bands and DJ for a while. My mom's always been into more of the metaphysical and holistic aspects. She's a macrobiotic cook, and always had crystals and, talked about chakras. We went to different churches like the Baha'is and Unity when I was younger. And I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to it until about 5 years ago or so, and I started looking more into healing frequencies. There's the old, you hear a lot of the New Age and metaphysical, we're all vibrations and raising your vibration, things like that. So I started looking into them to more from a sound, in a musician aspect. As someone, frequencies are quantifiable. Let's see if what's actually true about these. So started researching from there.
Yeah, tell a little bit about your research and how you got into the frequency thing, because I found that really interesting.
Right. Well, I found myself working a day job that was 8 hours a day with an hour commute each way, and this was right when smartphones first came out, so it was a desk job, and so I found myself with a lot of time to just play on the internet, and was researching UFOs, which has always been a hobby of mine, and just clicking link after link, and came across the Integratron, which is it's a giant all wooden structure built in Joshua Tree, California, to harness the Schumann Earth resonance and to spread it for rejuvenation and health via Tesla technology. It was built in the early 50s, and allegedly a ship landed out there and gave the builder who was living there running a restaurant with his family the instructions on how to build it and to operate it. Of course, about 2 weeks before it was supposed to have the switch flipped, he would mysteriously died and all his paperwork disappeared, kind of like Tesla and many before him. But the structure's still there. And as far as harnessing the Schumann Earth resonance, I started looking into that. It's the 7.83 hertz. It's also a healthy brainwave theta state. It's one of the primary frequencies emitted from our hands when we do Reiki or other touch therapies. So that it has a lot in common. And I was intrigued by it and started making meditation music CDs, posting them online, like Etsy and my own website. And a company in Chicago found me who was doing low frequency vibration therapy with giant expensive chairs with transducers built into them for the low frequency vibration. They wanted me to do the music for them because I was local and their producers were out of state. They have different systems that you need to calibrate everything. And so, unfortunately the owner passed away and they went out of business before we could work together. But when they first started talking about this, I booked a trip to the Integratron to record singing bowls and, my acoustic guitar and some other different instruments, some synthesizers and my singing bowl, Dorje and Bell-Said and Tingshes, all that kind of stuff. So I already had all these tracks and ended up putting a system together myself. So I've been doing the sound and vibration therapy ever since. I put brainwave entrainment frequencies in there and use chromotherapy as well. So it just kind of developed and grew from there.
Is that they could find your music on the SoundCloud? Is that the one?
Yes, there are a couple tracks or at least one track from the Integratron there, and there are some tracks similar to what I do in the sessions. Most of the session tracks I keep just for that and don't publish them or release them as albums. I use other versions, and actually there's only one other studio in the city that has those in Chicago that has those tracks, which is the Oneness Center, where I'm installing a system and teaching a class there later this month. So.
Teaching a class on what?
On the sound therapy, on the solar spectrum sound therapy certification class. So that'll be on the 26th if all goes well, Sunday. So that's at the Oneness Center in Chicago.
So tell us about that class.
Well, after extensively researching and going through different chakra theories for my sound and vibration therapies and doing extensive research on things that were and weren't true as far as that goes, I ended up at the request of a lot of people writing a book on it all, and I published that in July of 2014. Called Sounds Good, The Spiritual Science of Sound and Vibration. Right after that, my editor was teaching a Reiki 2 class, which I wanted to take, and she asked if I could barter her for a certification, and directed me to the World Metaphysical Organization and the American Council of Holistic Healers, who granted me accreditation for the certifications. And so I did the first class in September of 2014. We expected maybe 3 to 5 people. I had 15 and had to do 2 different days a week to fit everybody in.
Wow.
So yeah, it worked out pretty good from there.
So do you do that class all over the country? If there was somebody who wanted you to come and do that class, could they contact you?
Certainly. We are planning one in Atlanta, with a friend down there. And, I've done them so far only in Chicago. I've done talks in Omaha, and all over Chicago, but the class I've only done there. And usually at home, I did one at the Oneness Center, a small one, last month, and then we'll do a larger one at the end of this month. But yeah, it's something I could take around as long as there were, 5 students or more. It would be worth the trip, just about anywhere. I'm also offering it online. It's always better in person, of course, but it's a little discounted online, and I'm available by email or phone to help go through the large folder of documents and videos and music and charts that you get with the class. And we'll soon have it in Spanish as well, if all goes well. When I do this class at the end of July, or at the end of June, my digital editor on the first book has been living in Colombia for the past few years. When he was in Chicago, he was in a band of mine years back, and so he helped out with the first book, and he'll be taking the class and then translating everything to Spanish, so we'll have a Spanish version as well. So
if people wanted to get in touch with you to learn more about this class, where could they go?
Either to the website, which is a little bit long. It's Damian Keller, DAMEON, damiankeller.wix.com/soundsgood, or my email, which is just my name, damiankeller@gmail.com. You could just contact me.
Damian Keller Wix, that's damiankeller.wix.com.
Right.
/soundsgood.
That's correct.
That's right.
Yep.
Okay. So let's talk about your book. You mentioned your book, so let's talk about the book. Sure. Let's start with the, you've got 3 of them. The Sounds Good, Sounds Great, and then you've got the, one on chakras.
Charts. Yeah, the chakra charts.
Which are really amazing, I might add.
Well, thanks. I can't take much credit there. It's just a compilation. I wrote the intro and I have a foreword by a friend, but it was done at the suggestion of a girl I was dating who was a licensed massage therapist, a Reiki master teacher. She did my level 1 attunement and yoga instructor, and I had compiled all these charts into one just in a Microsoft Word document from the 4 or 5 in Wheels of Life by Anadea Judith. Several I found online, some of Judy Hull's crystal correlations I added in, just about anything I could find, and I was just tired of trying to find that one piece of information among 10 different charts. So I put everything in order into a Microsoft Word document. When she saw that, she suggested that I make it into a little handbook, and she wanted to give them out to the people who she attuned in Reiki. And she said, a lot of yoga instructors would want them. They're easy to carry around in a bag. They were small, and I was just printing them out at home, 8.5 by 11, and folding them in half, stapled like a zine, and selling a few at the stores I sold stuff out of in Chicago as well. And then I recently just went ahead and published it on Amazon Kindle as well, just because it's a little bit easier than hand printing and folding and stapling every single one of them every time. So I also managed to get a lot of the typos out of there, not all of them, but most. So it was worth a fresh look anyway. So, but again, I can't take much credit for it. It's all compiled from other people's charts. So.
No, but it's actually very interesting when I was looking through it. And one of the things that I found very interesting was something that I didn't know. was that, we all know that each chakra has colors. I knew that each one of them has a note. And now we were talking about that other day in conversation, and you were saying that some of the notes that people are saying go along with the chakras are incorrect. Am I remember that?
Well,
right?
It's tough to say anything's 100% correct or incorrect when it comes to something that is in essence theoretical. It's metaphysical, but physics is an important part of metaphysics, and it's often ignored by the metaphysical world just as often as spirituality is ignored by scientists or disregarded. So it's hard to find a scientist who would agree with you on a chakra correlation of color and light. In fact, an app developer recently argued with me that any correlation of sound to color or light is arbitrary because they're different, even though just last May of last year, light was photographed behaving as both a particle and a wave. And first they said it's only a particle, and then they said, well, sometimes it's a wave and sometimes it's a particle, but of course it's actually both at all times. And, as time goes on, science continues to prove metaphysical and occult, so-called or esoteric theories are proven to be true as time goes on. And so in essence, in the 70s, Anadea Judith published The Wheels of Light. A lot of that was inspired by Ledbetter's The Chakras, and I believe that was 1910. It was the first time the chakras were introduced to the West. He said that they correlated to the colors of the spectrum, which of course we know, the red to violet, and the notes of the musical scale. So once that was republished in Wheels of Life, there was a musician, a piano player named Stephen Halpern, and so he released an album called Chakra Suite in 1975. And so he used a C major scale because he's a piano player, and in piano, C is the root or the center of the piano. And right there you find the error in that line of thinking, where in piano that's C is the root and center, and chakras, root and center, are two very different things. So he's thinking linearly like a musician on a musical scale, so he uses C for the root, D, E, F, G. He just used the major scale, do, re, mi, like from The Sound of Music. Although if you use a simple calculator and go from terahertz, color and light, in that range of the spectrum, and you divide it down in octaves to the audible range of music, C is not red, C is green, it's center. So he was right about the center note, but then he just went up instead of outward with the rest of them. So he just assumed a scale, but your body's not a piano. Energy isn't a piano. It doesn't go in one direction like sheet music. So it was an innocent mistake, it was a logical assumption from a musician like that. But, I play guitar. I would say my root note's E, so does that mean my chakra scale should start at E? No, it's all relative. I think trumpet is B, so.
That's kind of interesting that you bring that up. I mean, what if all of us have a different note for our chakras?
Well, the theory of the chakras relating to colors is that the energy of each chakra, for instance, the root would be vibrating at an octave of red. Octaves are, if you take one note at 100 hertz and then you double that to 200, that's an octave. 4 would be another octave, 8, and so on. So that's how you find the actual color notes, the actual frequencies that correlate with the colors is by octaves over a very large area of the spectrum. But if you're going to use a red crystal because it's an octave of that chakra, and you use a red light because it's another octave of that chakra, you would want to use a red note, not a green one, because that would be dissonant and you're completely defeating the purpose. And there are hundreds of different chakra theories. We know there are more than 7. There's the Vedic, where there's the C-sharp Om that begins under, 12 inches below your feet. There are all kinds of different theories about it. But the bottom line is, if you go and you pay for a sound and light therapy treatment and they're using a purple note with a yellow light, to me, it's just, I've gone through several different associations and theories, including a known hoax where I ended up having to throw out a stack of CDs. And overall, what I what resonates most with me and what seems to work best for people is the octaves of the notes. Again, and you're using crystals along with it, the aromatherapy, on the theory that everything is octaves. It's called the law of octaves. It has, in science, generally only been applied to the periodic table, but in fact it actually relates to everything, and that's where you come into what's known as the cosmic keyboard, and the proper scientific pitch and tuning. So.
Which is all vibration and frequency.
Right. Everything has its own resonant frequency. So the idea is that, I've heard people say, well, you might interpret your root chakra as blue one day. And I said, well, you might want to look into that because maybe there's something wrong with it, that could be a sign, But again, if we correlate those along with the keyboard and with even when you expand those 7 notes and colors to the 12, when you use scientific pitch, which is otherwise known as A432 in equal temperament, but scientific pitch generally follows a just or a Pythagorean fifths temperament, in musical terms. But regardless, when you use the proper pitch and correlate the color notes to the chakras, all the other colors and notes, they're 12 in a scale, not 7. They're 12 in the chromatic scale, 7 in a major scale. So they all line up and make a lot of sense. When you get to the blue-green below between the throat and heart, you have C, which is your heart. D is your throat, but C sharp in between is a blue-green, and that's what's considered the Vedic Om. That's what sitars are tuned to. That's what the Buddhist monks chant at. A lot of singing bowls are in that C sharp, and the tuning forks we use for tuning fork therapy are that C sharp Om as well, and also the C128 medical scientific pitch.
Now, according to your chakra charts, the red, which is the root chakra, it's musical octaves A440G and A432 G sharp. Well,
okay, so the reason that I listed 440 in there is because that's the Western standard tuning. So if a guitar player or a keyboard player or any other musician who's used to tuning to A440 and doesn't want to get into different tunings yet, or if you're curious about a certain song you're hearing on a radio making you feel a certain way and it tells you what that is. If you're going to listen to, if you wonder why the song Crazy by Gnarls Barkley was so popular for so long, it's in C, at A440, the chord changes, when you realize what they are, it makes a lot of sense as to how that song makes people feel and react. So I listed the A440 just because that is the Western standard tuning. But I also listed the A432 because that's the happy compromise and equal temperament. Equal temperament means that when you have a piano, in order to be able to play in every key, or on a guitar, you have to have the notes spaced evenly, but they produce dissonant intervals. The notes, the pulsing that's created by 2 or more notes becomes dissonant the higher the pitch. So if you're at scientific pitch, the lower. If you tune down to A432, it's a little bit better. You get the C sharp Vedic Om at 13610 as well. Ideally, you'd want to use Pythagorean fifths or Maria Reynolds scale of fifths, which just isn't possible unless it's a fretless stringed instrument like violin, cello, some horns, or of course like trombone. You could do that with a slide. And I personally use computer sense software where I can tune to any temperament or pitch I want, so I'm not restricted by that, except for if I really wanted to put a guitar track on something, which I've run into a couple times lately, and I may have to get creative with my tuning and recording processes in order to do that. But it gets a little complicated for people who aren't musicians, but it just all comes down to, in the 1800s, they were just having problems. The symphonies were tuning higher because it's easier for horns to be loud without having to exert themselves. It's not good for strings. It's not good for voices. A lot of composers intended for a lower pitch, but there had to be a standard because people, an opera singer thinks they have perfect pitch, but a pitch in Vienna, they would go to France to play, and the pipe organ there is tuned different. It's older, so it hasn't been filed down and tuned higher as much, and so, now her perfect pitch is useless because the whole orchestra there is tuning to something completely different, and it was getting frustrating for the touring symphonies, and they just wanted a way to standardize everything as recordings were starting to become popular and that type of thing. So there was kind of a need for a standard, but also at the same time they were switching from using C as the tuning note to using A, and they were also switching from just temperament to equal temperament so that you could compose in more keys than one. So therefore the chord hearing on what the standard temperament should be and the tuning was extremely confusing to everyone involved, and they just settled on A440 because of physics reasons. Actually, it's smaller octaves or smaller fractions in the lower octaves for broadcast frequencies. So it was more of a physics reason they landed on that than anything else, actually, anyway. And there's a lot of kind of nonsense on the internet about the Nazis made everyone tune to A440 in the 40s, but realistically, Radio Berlin supported it just because of the same reason, the physics reasons. I don't think they were playing a lot of pop music on Radio Berlin during the war, so I don't think they were real concerned with how the musicians were tuning so much as they had a few other things to deal with. So
another thing I find interesting, well, first off, I mean, the chakra cards are just really awesome because they just go into so much. You got the color of the chakra, the musical octaves, where it's located, the intent, the chief operating force, developmental stage for the root chakras from the womb to 12 months. And I found that really interesting, that there was actually a point in our time where these chakras are being developed.
Right. Yeah, I found that interesting too. I believe most of that was from Wheels of Life by Anna Day and Judith, and she actually spoke in Chicago a couple years ago, and I missed it. I didn't hear about it until a couple days after it happened, so I was a little disappointed, but hopefully I'll get the chance to catch her again someday. But yeah,
and then I also go ahead.
Oh, the Wheels of Life by Anna Day and Judith. Like I said, it was one of the first to be released in the West after the Ledbetter's The Chakras, which was again more occult or esoteric until in the 60s and 70s, and people started gaining interest in the hippie and New Age movements, and so when she published that in 1975, it's pretty much been the Chakras Bible for everyone ever since, and it's always been in my house as long as I can remember. My mom gave me her copy. It could be hard to find sometimes. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I guess last time I looked, there were several available to order online, new and used, but I guess for a time they were kind of hard to find. People were buying a lot of my charts from the occult bookstore in Chicago because they were out of the Wheels of Life for a while.
So then you've got the development stage, which I thought was interesting, the identity, which for the root chakra is physical, the goals for the root chakra, stability, physical health, prosperity, and trust. Challenge for the root chakra is fear. The spiritual challenge, management of physical world. Attributes, survival, stability, grounding, security, home, self-preservation, perception, acceptance. The emotions, stability, security, trust, frustration, rage, passion, stillness, firmness. Now I like this, a sense. The root chakra has to do with our sense of smell. I found that really interesting. It also has an element, the root chakra is earth. Of course, we all know that there's gemstones and crystals that coincide with the various chakras.
Right.
One thing I didn't know that there's actually herbs and there are oils. So for the root chakra, it would be myrrh, velvet, frankincense, evergreen, cedarwood, sandalwood, patchouli. I've heard of this one. I tend to pronounce things the way they look. And then it's the root chakra is associated with planet Earth and Saturn. Its season is winter. Its animals, elephant, ox, and bull. And I found this interesting. Foods, proteins, meat, root vegetables, and spices. So like, do those foods and like the essential oils, are they there to support the chakra? I would think.
Right. Yeah, I would say so, to, keep it aligned and healthy. Again, most of those, kind of not really my department. My mom's more of the cook and dietitian, and I have a good friend at Urban Escape and Healing Center in Chicago, Neil Baldiga. He's works with doTERRA and makes a lot of his own blends, and he created some custom chakra blends for sprays for me to do aromatherapy along with the chakra attunements. So again, I pretty much copied these from other charts, but I definitely found them interesting and have seen them repeated in other places or used, for instance, in those sprays or oils. A lot of them just kind of seem to be logical to me and make sense too.
I also found it interesting that the root chakra coincides with astrological signs such as Scorpio, Capricorn, and Taurus, various deities, archangels, yoga path, yoga positions. Mm-hmm. That really interesting. And then the vowel sound, O as in rope. Mm-hmm. Verbs I don't understand that. What is that something that you would chant or?
Yeah, I would say it's a sort of a mantra. Again, that was, not quite sure if that came from Wheels of Life or another chart, but, for example, the next ones I feel, they go all the way up, I speak to the throat, of course. So I think, it kind of gives you an idea of, the thought behind the function of the chakra that I have. The root chakra is very much about grounding and balance in your home. So, material things. So, I have, that's a possession. I feel is your sacral, and so on. I speak for your throat, obviously, so they kind of correlate to the chakra themselves, it seems like to me.
And then the atrial organ, the root is the groin. And then they're responsible for various glands. So the root chakra is the adrenals. It's at the kidneys, chiefly responsible for releasing hormones in response to stress.
Right. The glands are essentially, the way I explain chakras and glands to people, and there are some groups who prefer to look at the glands over chakras necessarily, or, to people who don't understand the chakras, I say, the chakras are what people called the glands before they started doing medical research and cutting people open and discovering that they were all actually associated with physical functions of the body that also control a lot of our emotions and growth, and the pineal gland, the pituitary gland associated with the third eye and the crown. Obviously the sex organs are, the root chakra. People didn't really understand, those energies, and people knew of the functions of these things before they knew that there were glands inside us making us do these kinds of things. They were controlling these functions. The glands in our brain have a lot of control over our development and our, who we are as a person and who we turn into. So, there's definitely a huge development of that. Obviously, a lot of people don't realize the eye of Horus is just the, pituitary gland. So it's, when you cut a brain in half, that's exactly what it looks like, so it's just your third eye, and, so, more, obviously the Egyptians did mummification, things like that. They knew anatomy, so they knew that, but, it's not the eye in the sky or anything. It's the eye in your brain.
So like the physical malfunctions, like if your root chakra is blocked, you might have a problem with obesity, hemorrhoids, constipation, bowel disorders, frequent illness, bones and teeth, lower back pain, immune system disorders, skin problems, anemia, fatigue, bladder infection, blood cells and hemoglobin, and leukemia. So if we're dealing with one of these issues, is like would the root chakra be like the first thing we would want to address to go ahead and get that unblocked?
I mean, I would assume so. Again, you know, just to, I don't know, a lot of people will say that you're really not supposed to, only work on one chakra at a time. However, I don't know. I think, you know, one will misalign, one being misaligned will also misalign another, but, you know, I know people who, I have a good friend named Petra. She does tantra work, and she mostly focuses on the root chakra, you know, in her work. And so, you know, with her gongs and the stuff that she does. So, you know, and I've had people, when I do my chakra sessions, each is 5 minutes. So if you were to just go through them with, you know, a few seconds in between to change the light and the track and the aromatherapy, then it's only going to be 35, 40 minutes tops. But some people may want to, you know, repeat the root for 10 minutes instead of 5, or, I've done sample sessions where a woman said that she was having trouble, making decisions or getting answers from the universe about where she should live. She was in Chicago. She was considering moving back to LA. She'd been back and forth, and all her stuff was in storage, so she could do either. She just wasn't getting a clear answer through meditation and things like that. So I said, okay, well, the root, let's do the root because that's your grounding, that's your home, and let's do your crown because that's your communication with the universe. So we did 5 minutes of each, and she meditated on it and said that she had a clearer idea of what she wanted to do after that. So I found that to be interesting. So, you know, you can, especially with a short attunement like that, I don't see anything wrong with it. I still smoke. I only smoke organic, natural tobacco, and I feel much better. My apartment smells better, and I don't feel as addicted. It's the chemicals that get you. But
Right.
point being, I also have to give talks, and I have to talk for 8 hours at a time for a class. So I'll often just do a throat, you know, chakra session for myself, and maybe a little Reiki with it. And I generally end up coughing up a lot of junk and feeling like there's energy doing work on that area when I do it. So I know that it works for me for that.
Well, so you know, I'm with you. I'm also a smoker, and I switched to the American Spirit. And once I did that, I found that I went from smoking 4 cartons a month to only smoking 2 cartons a month.
Right. Yeah. You cut back so much. It's just, yeah, like I said, it's the chemicals that keep you wanting another one nonstop. And once you get rid of those and get over that, when I first switched over, I bought some regular tobacco to mix in with it because I roll my own. I get the pouches of the organic, and I bought a regular pack to mix with it to wean myself off the chemicals, but I ended up throwing most of that pack away. I just couldn't even deal with them anymore once I quit smoking them. It was like I could just taste it, and it was disgusting. So it was pretty easy to quit the chemicals.
That was the other thing too, is that I found I wasn't craving a cigarette. Like when I was smoking the stuff with all the garbage in it, it was like every half hour.
Right.
Wanting a cigarette. But we have a couple people who are asking some questions in the chat room.
Okay, great.
The first one is, they want to know what you're meaning for the different brainwave terms that you show for each color. Example, theta, alpha, beta. Let me read it the way he has it. What is his mean for the different brainwave terms he shows for each color? Example, theta, alpha, beta.
That I show for each color. In my chakra sessions, and in the CD that I sell for the solar spectrum chakra sessions with the brainwave entrainment, where I got those from was actually, there was an article by a Swedish couple online, who proposed those. And it was interesting because the EEG system I use shows each range in a different color as well. And so I've had people say, do those relate to the chakras? And I'm like, no, not really. That's just the way they do it in the program, so you can see the different one, you know, just to be more clear on which one's peaking higher at a certain time. However, this couple kind of did correlate them low to high from from the root to crown. And I thought, well, that kind of makes sense in a way, I guess. So I gave it a try. They said it was untested. So I went ahead and put those frequencies for brainwave entrainment tracks over my existing chakra tracks and gave that a try as opposed to what I had in there. And I put on the EEG and did a video screenshot of it, and it seemed to, each one, obviously it worked, and I was getting those peaks all the way up. But as I sat there and meditated, it really did kind of feel like a Kundalini activation, bringing myself from the lower brainwave frequencies, increasing the peaks in each one from low to high, and ending up in high gamma. Really kind of tended to have a third eye awakening effect. So I emailed them and said, sent some screenshots and said, hey, just so you know, it's been tested now, and here's my results. And I never heard back from them, and they haven't changed the website or anything, but I found them to work. So that's where I got those from. I just I don't strongly associate them with each chakra, but when you're doing a whole session like that, just increasing the peaks from low all the way up to high is kind of a good brain exercise all the way through anyway. And like I said, it did kind of seem to end off by awakening the third eye a little with a high gamma, and so I just went ahead and went with that.
They're referring to your chakra chart.
Mm-hmm. The chakra chart?
Yeah. With the meaning for the different brainwave terms for each one of the colors on your chakra chart, they're wanting to know what the meanings. What does it mean for brainwave terms that you show for each color?
What's the meaning for that? Well,
on your chakra chart.
I don't really remember putting those in there. I'm looking right now. And if I did, it would have just been the same. It would be from what I got it from. I'm not seeing that I have the brainwave,
no, I didn't
ranges
see that either.
and the chakra charts either.
Ooh, that would be interesting.
Well, yeah, I mean, and like I said, if I was to list them, it would have just been that same correlation. But yeah, I didn't actually put those in the chakra chart book. In the chart where I show the notes and the colors that I have, I do have the brainwave frequencies are listed, but those are pretty you can find what brainwave frequencies mean either on my websites or many others. The brainwave ranges are a pretty common thing from delta to gamma anyway. There's only been a couple studies on epsilon, which is below 0.5, and on lambda, which is above 100 to 200, which I have the correlations on my cosmic keyboard chart, but which you can find on my site or in the book. But yeah, those are pretty common. Delta 0.5 to 3 hertz is a deep, dreamless sleep. Theta is meditation, relaxation or light sleep. Alpha is awake, but relaxed and calm. Beta is wide awake and alert, and gamma is a bit above that, but it's also associated with creativity, language, memory, learning. So high hyper gamma and lambda are only really seen in people who like Tibetan monks and people who meditate a lot and really know how to access those frequencies. In fact, I had a friend in a Facebook group a few years back who she did a lot of meditation, and she knew the kind of work I was doing, and she knew about brainwave entrainment and things like that. And so she went for a checkup, and they did an EEG, and the neurologist stopped the machine and told her to take off, they took off all the stuff, and she said, I don't know what you're doing, but you're screwing up the reading. And she had just closed her eyes and taken a couple deep breaths, but she immediately slipped into a state that the neurologist couldn't understand, so, unfortunately, I'm pretty sure she still paid for that visit, but it's, when you go and you know more about your own brain, if somebody who didn't know, about, the science behind it and understand that that's what's going on would be a little freaked out to have their neurologist say that they didn't know what was going on and their brain was making funny patterns, but,
Okay. The listener who was asking the question, they pulled up the solar spectrum and the cosmic keyboard. You have the chart right next to that.
Okay,
of
right.
The various chakras. That's what they're referring to.
Okay, so is it the one that says the correlations, or is it ones with all the frequencies and the keyboard on it? All the the notes and a whole bunch of keys on the keyboard, or is it just the one octave? And
it's right next to the solar spectrum and cosmic keyboard on your website. There's a chart. It shows the outline of a person, and it's got the different chakras.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Those are the correlations. Those correlations on there, as far as how I assigned them to each chakra and energy center, was based on that couple from Sweden's website and the experiment I did, and then what I ended up using for my tracks. As far as the frequencies, the actual frequencies, the descriptions I just read, and then also those for lambda and epsilon are in what I have listed as the A432 cosmic keyboard one. It's got more of the octaves of the notes, all the frequencies, the individual frequencies, and it's got all the correlations listed on there. Unfortunately, if you search,
this listener is saying that B flat is showing as the solar plexus and theta.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not understanding. I'm not understanding if this listener is saying that that's wrong, or if he's wanting to know. I'm not exactly sure the question.
I'm not either. Yeah. Again, and I don't, brainwaves are they're all in a really low, they're below our hearing. Humans can only hear 20 hertz, from about 20 hertz to 20,000. And so brainwaves are too low to hear. So when it comes to those, lower octaves that we're talking about, again, it seemed like the couple kind of made an assumption that the brainwave states would go low to high just like our chakras. I thought that was an interesting theory and gave it a try. And so that's what I came up with, as far as the closest notes I could get for brainwave, entrainment frequencies to go along with, the proper color octaves and everything as well. When I put the tracks together, everything, even the pulse beats or the brainwave entrainment beats have to be in tune with everything else and also in tempo, or you're gonna create a dissonance that creates another interval, and you just muddy up the pie. So everything has to be correlative. But again, as far as how I came up with, the solar plexus being theta, I think brainwaves are all in your brain. I think they all probably have more to do with your third eye and crown than any other chakras. It was just a theory proposed by them as a way to do a Kundalini, entrainment session type of a thing where you just start low and you increase the peaks gradually all the way up to the crown. And so as long as I was doing that with the physical work, with the low frequencies and the color therapy, I thought that it would correlate, and it wasn't disharmonious. It seemed to work pretty good for me. And at the end, you're exciting the higher frequencies, your gamma, your high gamma. So, you come out of it pretty refreshed and awake and kind of rejuvenated. And, any neurologist will tell you that a healthy balance of brain waves is that, and being able to switch gears better than anything else other than if you're trying to meditate. So it was a way to do a good balance as well, and just kind of activate each one at a time from low to high. So
somebody else, when we were talking about smoking, somebody else asked about organic tobacco. Where, excuse me, where do you get your organic tobacco from?
Oh, just actually, most of the, not most, it's kind of hard to find. Like a lot of the just regular corner gas stations won't have it, but a lot of them do. They don't tend to have it at like Walgreens or a lot of the grocery stores or anything. But in Chicago, the corner store right by my house had it. Here in Omaha, there are a lot of gas stations. They're smaller, like discount tobacco places. They'll always have them. So, but yeah, they sell the American Spirit organic pouches for around $10, and that'll last me a week. So,
for rolling your own?
Yeah. Yep.
They sell a Spirit where you are, just the tobacco?
Yeah, you can get the red pouches, the all natural organic. Yep.
Really?
So, yeah. So
I haven't seen those here. I've just seen the cigarettes.
Yeah, those tend to be more expensive than regular ones, but I don't know why. But yeah, these last me a whole week for about $10, so I can't beat that. I don't see how people are spending the prices they are on them. In Chicago, they're like 13 and some change a pack. So
really,
for regular ones, yeah,
they're like 7 something down here for a pack. But I do the dark green.
Oh yeah. They don't make menthol tobacco to roll your own because they don't make menthol tobacco. They use it's in the filter in those packs, the ones you buy. It's a menthol filter instead of tobacco. They told me. I emailed and asked. So,
huh.
Yeah.
I was looking for a link so I could put up the link for your for the chakra book, but I don't see that it's on Amazon.
It is. When I look up my name, it doesn't come up right away for some reason. Actually, if you just search Amazon for my name as under books, it should come up. Let me see here.
Even when I click on the link on your website, it takes me to Amazon, but it's the Sound Good book that.
The Sounds Good one?
Yeah, it comes up. And when I click on your name, it does not come up. The only thing that's coming up is Sounds Good, Sounds Great, and then another Sounds Good from 2014. Oh, once a Kindle edition. Okay.
Oh, right. Computer's running slow here, but I'll try to pull it up. But that's good to know about the website. I'll have to fix that link. Needed to fix something else in there too, but.
Yeah, even for under the author name on Amazon, that book is not coming up. And also, for the recently viewed items, there's some really interesting stuff.
Well, let's see. I don't know why that went.
But yeah, no, that's.
Oh, when I typed it in under all, and it comes up. First thing, it comes up before the other 2 books. I just searched my name on Amazon, and I didn't put in authors or anything. It just under all, it came up right away.
Okay, let me see so that I can put that in the chat room.
And I think I may have to republish the charts in the half size because I did it as a larger book, but it was suggested that I go back to the smaller version. Easier to carry around, so.
Well, it's got here for the Kindle, so it says $0. So is the Kindle, if they get it on Kindle, is it free?
If you subscribe to Amazon Prime.
Okay.
Yeah, it's free for Amazon Prime members. I think you get selected books are you get free Kindle. It that kind of threw me for a loop. Last year, I got a royalty payment I completely didn't understand, and it was like maybe 3 days after my regular one, and it came in a check in the mail, and usually I get direct deposit, and it dated all the way back to the release of the very first book. So, well over a year, and I was really confused, but it turned out it was royalties for all those, because even though Amazon subscribers get it for free, I still make something off of it. So that was a nice surprise.
This is really good because I just clicked on the chakra charts book.
Mm-hmm.
Then I clicked on your name and it took me to the Sounds Great, Sounds Good, just the Kindle version, and then with the chakra charts. Do you have two publisher pages on here? Or author?
No, other people, for example, when I just type in my name on Amazon and I scroll down, there's a copy of my first book for $41. There's a copy of the second one for $52. Other people buy them and then resell them. I actually had to call and ask about that because it's still available for the normal prices through Amazon, but other people buy and resell them. I'm still making royalties, but as they put it, anybody could do that, with anybody's stuff as long as they're a retailer. So, kind of struck me as strange. At one point, one of those came up before the regular one, and I wasn't too happy about that. But I guess it got more views for some reason or something along those lines. But anyway, yeah, I was a little confused by that. Like, why does it say it's $50-something when it's a $20 book? So, yeah.
It baffles me because when I clicked on your name for this, I mean, it's really not even really coming up as a author page. Well, anyway, enough with that. I got the link up, so for the
Cool.
chakra. So if anybody out there wants to check out the chakra charts, go to Amazon and put in Damian Keller. So it's D as in David, A, M like Michael, E, O, N like Nancy, and then Keller, like in Helen Keller. Put that in under all, and Damian's, the chakra charts will come right up. So, and I really, if anybody's into chakras, I totally recommend getting this chakra charts because it's just amazing and just so much more information than, what we normally get. The rest of what we get is just always so basic. So I think that's amazing. So Damian, we're getting ready to, take a break. I want to go more into the, Sounds Great and Sounds Good books when we get back. Is there anything that you want to leave us with as far as, chakras go?
Not particularly. Again, like I said, it can be argued that, there are many different theories and there are obviously, hundreds of chakras and energy centers throughout the body. But when we're talking about the correlations to the glands, which are definitely important, then we're referring to those 7, which is the most common, type of theory that we use in the West. And again, if you go in for a chakra attunement where they're using color and light and sound, it's just best that those frequencies are correct. There's this solfeggio theory out there that's just basically a hoax. Solfeggio really just means a major scale, and they are claiming that they're this weird set of frequencies. They don't make a scale. They're extremely dissonant. They're extremely high-pitched, and it's left over from before the pitch and temperament debates back in the 1800s. And, they're suggesting people tune higher instead of lower, and it just doesn't work. And I used, when I first heard about them, I used them, and then once I started researching them, they claim they were decoded from the Bible. Well, a frequency is a cycle per second. The second wasn't invented till about 1,000 years after the Bible was written. There's no way, those could be frequencies. And so it was all just kind of a silly hoax. And, there's a lot of misconceptions out there. There's a lot of intuition, and that's great. Scriabin thought that, the note D was silver or something like that, but again, when you use a calculator, I just go ahead and trust that, and then it seems to be right, and I've had no complaints and a lot of great feedback from it. So. Okay,
well, we've got 6:59. We're going to go ahead and take a break. There's so much that we have to talk about, and this hour just flew by. I'm just like,
sure did.
All right, so we're going to take a break right now, and when we come back, we'll talk to Damien more about his books on sound. Sounds good, sounds great, and also talk to him about some of the various services that he offers. So we'll be right back after this music break. Back, you're listening to It's Your Life, Live It to the Fullest. I am your host, Joyce Wheeler. Today is June 10th, 2016. It's Friday. You're listening to Haggis Shack Radio and Mo Spirit Radio. Please remember that we're a listener-sponsored station, so click that donate button and show some love. I am here with my guest, Damien Keller. Damien, welcome back.
Thanks. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so glad that you came. I had mentioned before the break about talking about your two books, Sounds Good and Sounds Great, but there's just so much that you do, and we're left with an hour. I was just thinking to myself, maybe there's something that you want to talk about or that you really want to put out there.
Actually, there is. Now that you mention it, I'm glad. Thanks. In regards to what I was referring to as the cosmic keyboard, the law of octaves, and the color notes of the frequencies, back in the 50s, the imperator of the ancient mystical order Rosicrucians, or Amorc, the Rosicrucian order in America, invented a machine called the Luxotone, and what it did was take any kind of input and convert that to the color octaves, which would display on a screen. They did a private performance there on their grounds in San Jose, utilizing an organ player, an opera singer, and a few other things, I believe. But it's something that I've wanted to recreate. A lot of these apps and programs, such as the guy I mentioned earlier, debating about the actual correlations. He has a cymatics program for the iPhone, for example, where you can type in a note and it'll play the cymatic pattern in a color, but not the actual color octaves. So I was asking if they could change that, and he was arguing that they weren't at all related. But the point being is that I've wanted to develop a computer program and or an app for that for some time now, and haven't really come across anyone who could do that. I think it would be a basic free app using scientific pitch, maybe Pythagorean temperament, because that could be utilized for a lot of other purposes. As a basic app, we could, maybe charge for add-ons, which, would be different, pitch and temperaments, or, being able to use different inputs or things like that. But, I think it's something that'd be incredibly basic. I'm just not a computer programmer or an app designer, so if anybody's interested in that, it's something I'd like to put out there for free, but might have some monetary value down the road to us. So.
Damien, I actually have two young men in my life who actually are pretty good with IT and doing stuff like that.
Oh, that's great. You mentioned your son was working on, did electronics repairs and things like that. I wish he was, closer so he could take a look at my Moog as well.
Now, actually, my husband does the electronic repair, and he'd be able to help you with it. But I have my one son who does IT, and then I have my stepson who's actually who is very much into the computers, and he does web design and some other stuff, and he knows a lot of people, and we'll have to connect after the show, and I'll see if I can't get you two together. He might be able to come up with an app. And actually, my 19-year-old, both of them know people who develop apps.
Okay,
so,
yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, we'll have to get in touch, probably tomorrow or something. I'll go ahead and message you, and, we'll see if we can get that going for you.
Oh, sure. I'm sure we'll be in touch quite a bit after this. So. Thanks so much.
Oh, no problem. Is there anything else that you want to touch on? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, not at all. That's great. That's great to hear. I've had a few people who kind of might know somebody, but that hasn't panned out so far. So I just thought I'd put it out there while we had a lot of people listening. But that's great to know. I should have mentioned it to you before. So,
Nope.
No, I'd say that's,
We have a question from a listener.
Okay.
She wants to know if you know anything about Sherry Edwards of Sound Health Options.
A little bit. I'm familiar with some of her work. I know she's she's aware of 432 temperament and Ohm and things like that. I know she still promotes or utilizes the solfeggios. A lot of people do. Even the name just makes me cringe because it's actually a really Orwellian appropriation of an already existing musical term. But I know she also wrote a review for Susan Alexander, who I'm good friends of work with now. She did a lot of work in the early 80s with actual DNA frequencies. Her and Dr. David Deemer actually used the scale of octaves to bounce infrared off our DNA molecules and convert them down into audible frequencies. And so I know Sherry has commented on some of her work as well, and so we're all kind of in the same circles. I may have even messaged with Sherry early on in some of my research. I can't recall for sure, but I do remember looking her up, and then again when Susan mentioned her not long ago. So.
Okay, so one thing that, let's say, you do so much and you know so much. I just feel like we're not going to be able to cover everything in this one show.
Well, we could always do another one. I got everything up and running here now. So,
he says, another question. How is your work different from Sherry Edwards?
Again, I'm not extremely familiar with her work. I know that I think from what I recall, I believe she does the voice readings. You submit a recording of your voice, and she does an interpretation of it. I'm pretty sure I've heard of another place or two doing that, or individuals or companies, but if I recall, that's kind of what she does. I don't really do that kind of work. I think she's a little bit more working with voice analyzation and intuitive study of that, and kind of bouncing back a reading to people based on that, if I recall correctly. Again, I haven't visited her site or seen anything pop up lately. So the last time I went and looked was, like I said, maybe about a year ago when Susan had mentioned her again, and I went back and looked at her site, but I don't entirely recall all the aspects of her work. So. One
of the listeners said that Sherry Edwards might be able to write your app.
Oh, really? Okay. That might be interesting. Yeah. Again, I'm actually pretty sure I messaged her a while back at the beginning of some of my research, because I know in doing searches for sound healing that she'll come up pretty close to the top. So I know she was one of the first people I looked at, and I'm pretty sure we've probably conversed in the past. So.
One thing I'd like to talk about is how frequency, color, and music, each is a separate topic, how they affect our health both negatively and positively. So for frequency, how does the frequencies that we come in contact with, and I'd like various examples of those, how do they affect our health in a negative way or in a positive way?
Okay. Well, in class, I generally tend to start with the Schumann earth resonance, just because that's a pretty important frequency. There are very few specific brainwave frequencies that do anything more than others in their range. But the Schumann resonance is as close as you can get to that. It's 7.83 hertz, being a healthy theta wave for us. And a lot of it's pretty close. A lot of times people round it scientifically up to 8 hertz or down to 7.5. I'd say it's closer to 8, and in scientific pitch, that'd be a C. If you're looking at 7.83 in an equal temperament, that'd be closer to a B, which is where I correlated in my chakra attunements. And a lot of the EMFs and things like that are affecting that. There are also a lot of claims that it's rising. That's not true. There's a site called globalcoherence.com where you can actually monitor a daily screenshot of the Schumann resonances, and it's not rising, but every now and then you do see fluctuations in the main frequency, and that can affect our heart rate, that can affect our brain waves, and in a negative way. And You can see these fluctuations that may be caused by HAARP. They may be caused by an earthquake. They may be caused by lightning or storms, just about anything. But tough to say. The larger disturbances would more likely be some kind of electromagnetic interference, such as HAARP or something else. I know a lot of people are concerned with the circuit noise in their house coming from a refrigerator, or the buzzing you get through speakers if they're not grounded, things like that, TV sometimes, or radios. Actually, in the U.S., our building circuitry runs at 60 hertz, which is pretty close to an octave of the Schumann resonance. And there is a theory that it was kind of decided on for that reason, so that it wouldn't be extremely disruptive to us or distracting or disruptive to our energies. And in fact, in England and in Europe, they use 50 hertz. And when people were asked to hum a note randomly in the U.S., they hit an octave of that 60 hertz, and in the UK and in Europe, when they did the same study, they hit an octave of the 50 hertz. So it's kind of something that people become attuned to, but it's not as bad as people think it is. I don't think there's not so much wrong with that as much as the cell phone tower is popping up in the middle of nowhere. Then all of a sudden there are 10 cases of breast cancer. That's more the problem than your house's wiring. So.
And just for anybody who listens to this in the future, Damien had said EMF. If you don't know what EMF is, it's the electromagnetic field. So we all have one that's naturally in our bodies, but we also have a synthetic electromagnetic field that we come in contact with all the time. Like Damien mentioned, the cell towers is one of them. Microwaves and various electronics, cell phones that are in our house, and those synthetic electromagnetic fields can actually interfere with our natural electromagnetic fields. Just one.
Right. Yeah, and that's where, right. And that's where, the Schumann resonance comes in handy and to do a meditation with it or to tune your brain waves to it can help, just kind of restore yourself back. It's kind of a reset button after being exposed to those all day and having your cell phone in your pocket or next to your head or staring at a computer screen or a TV. So.
Oh gosh. Cell phone in your pocket, cell phone by my head. No.
Right.
Cell phone is always on speaker. I never ever put my cell phone to my head. Never.
Well, that's probably for the best. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. Plus, now that I got the smartphone and it's all flat and stuff, it just is really awkward, which I'm actually pretty happy about.
Right.
But it's awkward. And I just want to say that one of the reasons, not one of the reasons, but I met, Damien on LinkedIn when I did a search for shungite, and he came up and I checked out his website and I was just totally intrigued by what he was doing. But Damien had shared an interesting story about his cat with the shungite. Could you share that story about the cat's water?
I use shungite in my water to cleanse and purify it, and it's not an FDA approved type of thing, so you can't buy or sell it or recommend anyone that they put it in their water. But some holistic places I know would say if someone would happen to fall in your water and you were happen to drink it, 8 to 24 hours later, it's purified. So, and not just like a regular water purifier, it actually gets rid of the fluoride and chlorine that a lot of filters don't, or that may still be in some bottled waters. So anyway, I put a handful in my cat's water dish. I have 3. I brought 2 back with me and one's still in Chicago for now. But
oh, poor kid.
So I don't know. He's in good company. Anyway, my newest one, Sonia, she's a big girl, fluffy cat, and looks like a Ewok. And I put the shungite in her water and a clear quartz and a carnelian, and when I take them out to put them in the window once a month or so, she gets mad and doesn't want to have anything to do with her water until she gets all her rocks back in there. So
I think that's so funny. I think that is just so cool. It's just like, where's
she lays in it, and she's all, she'll lay with her face in the bowl and come out all soggy, and she loves it. She'll lay there with her little paws wrapped around it.
That is so cool. But of course, they're a lot more sensitive than we are.
Right. I think I told you too, when my other cat got sick, he had some kind of abrasion or a cut or something on his tongue, and it got infected. And the night before I took him into the vet, he was laying at the foot of my bed, and I put a handful of crystals, some amethyst and shungite and some other stuff. I think it was ametrine, which, part amethyst, part citrine. And I put it just kind of a few inches in front of him, and he got up and struggled to get up, and he kind of sniffed at him and batted him a little bit, and then moved forward and laid down on top of him, and he laid there all night until it was time to go in the morning. So, and then ever since, he's been obsessed with amethyst. My girlfriend in Chicago set a necklace I made her down on my bed, and he came up and just laid on top of it, kept trying to steal it. So it's pretty funny.
That is funny. And about crystals, you do color and light and crystal therapy? Yeah,
I kind of invented a thing I call color gone, and it's basically, I heard a couple of years ago about these chromotherapy systems, and I've seen them displayed at a few of the events I've worked at as well. They're nice, they're effective, I'm sure, but they're these extremely large systems on a ballast of 7 LED lights, all shot through cut quartz crystals. And right away I wasn't sure how I felt about these cuts. They were cut into even hexagons instead of the way the crystal naturally formed.
Right.
And so I didn't feel great about that. And then I kind of thought, well, I make orgone transducers, which, if you're not familiar, that's using fiberglass resin and metals to you combine them and make molds to attract and reflect etheric energy. But being that any kind of orgone generator or transducer these days, you're not really supposed to have it around any kind of fluorescent lights or a computer or cell towers, and these days, good luck finding a place that isn't. So this couple in the early 2000s started putting crystals in there, and that converts the energies into positive energy. So
why aren't you supposed to have them around these things?
Well, if it's just the layers of organic and inorganic material, like the fiberglass and metal, or the fiberglass resin and metal shavings or metal beads, then it attracts and reflects all energies, and amplifies all energies. So therefore, it's going to pick up all those EMFs, as we were just talking about, and I actually have an EMF reader, an electrician buddy of mine gave me, and the monitor I use right now isn't too bad, but the TV here is, and I had these fluorescent lights I used to use for displays, the fluorescent light boxes, and they blow up half the room. I could be halfway across the room and it's picking up on that thing. So, you got to be careful with that. So if you were just using the alternating layers of the organic and inorganic material, you could use cork, you can use, all different kinds of metals, then you'd be attracting and amplifying those frequencies. But what this couple in the 2000s discovered is if you use the fiberglass resin and metals and make small to large pieces with molds, then put crystals in there, then the crystals will transmute the energies into positive, and bounce back out the positive energy. Also, the crystals have a piezoelectric effect. That means when you apply pressure or heat, they emit energy, which is extremely quantifiable. Most people know that. I mean, a quartz watch runs forever on a tiny little tuning fork cut piece of quartz. So, the basic laws of physics would tell you that if you made a large quartz tuning fork, you could probably power your house on it. Why we don't do that is, a question for Edison. But the point being, crystals certainly generate energy when you apply pressure or heat. And certain crystals like black tourmaline will emit negative ions, which are actually positive for you. The negative ions are what are good for you, and they put those in those sports bracelets for you to wear when you're jogging and working out and things like that. So it's not like it's a super secret or anything. But when you put the quartz or other crystals into the orgone transducers, I wrap them in copper, most people do, and then that already activates the piezoelectric effect. But when the resin dries and hardens, it contracts, and so it's squeezing the crystals, and they're always generating energy. So they're always pulling it in and kicking out more than they're pulling in. So back to the original question. So when I was looking at this giant ballast situation that was a couple grand, and it looks like it'd take up half your living room, with 7 different LEDs shooting through these specially cut quartz crystals, I thought, well, I make orgone transducers, and I looked online and I found a 16-color LED bulb with a remote to change the colors, and I just molded a orgone transducer cone directly to it with a large clear quartz in it. At first I was putting shungite in there as well. And then I switched over to moldavite because that's a real high frequency crystal and activates all the chakras. So, those are real intense. Some people can't even handle being around moldavite. So when it's got that LED beaming through it, it's pretty intense. And it was recently shown, scientifically as well that LED light amplifies the piezoelectric effects of crystals by up to 400%.
Really?
So, right. So I think that was the idea behind these, ballast systems. But for the money and the way they were designing them with the cut crystal, I said, I make orgonite, I do orgone transducers. Why don't I just mold this right to, this bulb, and it's portable, and I just put it on a clamp light and a mic stand. You could use a, camera tripod or whatever you want, and position it to any of the 7 chakras, or when I do the Om sessions, I put it between the throat and the heart. For the, astral projection or third eye, you put it on the brow, for the Schumann resonance, etc.
Are you talking about putting the light on the chakras or the crystal?
Mm-hmm. Well, the light, the LED light shines through an orgone transducer bulb. It's a clear bulb with silver metal BBs and beads in it, and then a giant clear quartz wrapped in silver anodized copper with moldavite, small pieces of moldavite added in. So the LED light shines through the orgone transducer and the giant clear quartz. So it's amplifying the piezoelectric effect of the quartz by at least 400%, because it's an orgone transducer, probably more. They're pretty intense, and a lot of times when I do the sample sessions, they're only 10-15 minutes, and I'll forget about them, and I come back and they're still laying there under the light 5-10 minutes later, just like, this is even just great, so there's probably at least 30 in use by practitioners in Chicago and outside of Chicago at this point. I've made a lot for a lot of individuals and centers and practitioners. So
very interesting, very, very interesting. I'm sitting here thinking about like all the energy healers that I know here in Louisiana, and kind of going, I wonder if they'd be interested in this.
Yeah,
you need to make a trip down here, Damien.
Well, like I said, we've got a trip tentatively planned for Atlanta. I'm not sure when we're actually going to make it. A good friend of mine, introduced me to a friend of hers down in Atlanta. The friend of mine in Chicago is a writer, and she works a lot for, TV shows and some independent movies. She's a screenwriter, so she's back and forth to Atlanta a lot, and she met a woman down there who's a Reiki master healer. She said there's a lot open for it down there too, and she actually had to go to Savannah to get attuned by a real old guy that's a master teacher there. So, we plan to go down there to barter my attunement for, a certification, and probably have a few more people for the class as well. So, my long-term plan is actually, I kind of have a line on a free, Airstream, motorhome that you tow.
Nice.
It's a pretty good sized one. It needs a little bit of work, but it'd be cheaper than buying one new. Those older ones are kind of worth a lot as it is. So a good friend of mine has one just sitting out in Michigan. So, part of my reason for coming back to Omaha was to get a car, because it's a lot easier to own and, to buy and to own here than in Chicago. And,
right.
And my dad's a mechanic and so is my sister's fiance. So.
Just about Chicago. Chicago was expensive.
Oh, it is. Yeah. So
really funny that you mentioned this, because my husband and I actually, my boys are 19 and 17, and they're getting ready to be out on their own. So I just told my husband, I said, this is ridiculous. Our mortgage is like $223 a month, something like that, and we're paying like over $500 of that is just interest, and our interest is not that high. And I'm just like, this is crazy. Why are we doing this? And then we've got stuff, I'm looking, we got this stuff that we don't need. And I'm like, well, why don't we just either build like a tiny house or get a fifth wheel and just live out of that? Why are we sitting here putting all our, mainly his hard-earned money into this? For what?
Well, part of the plan I've got is, I've got, most of my stuff at my dad's now. He has his drums in the basement and he plays bass now too and stuff, so I could kind of maybe set up the studio here. But I do kind of plan on opening a shop or center here, or I'll just get a decent sized house where I can run it out of there. But either way, the plan is, and my girlfriend's still in Chicago with, like I said, one out of 3 kiddies and a good chunk of my stuff still, and so the plan is to get that Airstream and get it fixed up this summer while I'm here, and have a couple people who can help. My sister's got a friend who's a woodworker too and does construction, so we're gonna fix that thing up to where come winter we'll be able to hit the south and get out of this cold weather and slow season in the Midwest, and we'll be heading south. And with the Airstream, it's pretty good size, so I'll be able to put the kiddies in there and all my stuff for the classes. And like I said, if I've got 3 to 5 students and I'm already on the road, I can, it makes it worth the trip. And with the Airstream, I'll be able to just kind of be self-sufficient and stay for a couple days and not, and hang out in the nice warm weather wherever I go. There's also, with the Integratron in California, the people who work there, some of them have trailers just parked out there, and so we could probably camp out there for a week or two as well, especially during the Joshua Tree Music Festival next year and the Rancho de la
they're boondocking. Boondocking. It's when you have a trailer, fifth wheel, and you just go and you stay someplace and you don't necessarily have any connections to water or electricity.
Yeah, we wouldn't really need that. The town's 20 minutes away, so, if I buy something that can tow it, obviously we just leave it somewhere for, a few days, and we could, if I'm teaching a class there, we could, hang out there for, 3-4 days and drive into town to pick stuff up. San Jose and LA are only a couple hours away, so, we can go out there easily and get around. But yeah, the idea is to just be out of the cold and hit the south and southwest. So, the fact that you're in Louisiana makes that great, because, definitely be coming to visit you and, getting out of the snow.
And you know what, Damien, as long as we're here, you could always pull in here. We actually have a hookup.
Oh, cool. Even better.
People that lived here before. The people who lived here before were actually victims of Katrina.
Oh, wow.
They moved here with some family, and they've got an electrical hookup in the back.
Oh, cool.
So you need to come in October. I'm actually doing a natural living festival.
Oh, that'd be great.
October 8th, and I'd love to have you there as a speaker, and Well,
that'd be great. I'll definitely have the wheels by then, good, reliable, something large. So even if I don't have the trailer ready to go by then, I could still come down, because I'd definitely like to come and check that out. That sounds like it'd be a good time.
Yeah, I'm hoping so. It's the first time I'm doing it. I've never done it before, but I feel really good about it, and I really feel that there's and energy is like I'm getting this message, energy. You have to talk about energy. You need to talk about energy. It's like, okay, we could do
Yeah.
But it's
Right.
the first time event, and, I can even talk with some of the other people down here and see if maybe we can't get you set up with like doing some kind of class while you're here.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be pretty cool.
So we got something else to talk about too.
Yeah, definitely. That
All
sounds
right.
good.
So, the brainwave entertainment. I'm totally interested in brainwave entertainment. Tell us about that.
It's entrainment, not entertainment.
I'm sorry.
Entrainment. Oh, that's okay. As in,
Last time too.
Oh, that's all right. It's a common mistake. They're extremely similar words. Well, that's based on sympathetic vibratory physics. It's a law of physics that isn't generally taught, but it's pretty common. If you take a tuning fork and you take another tuning fork the exact same pitch and cut, and you hold one in one hand and you strike the other, and you hold them, a couple inches apart, the one that you didn't strike is going to start vibrating in sympathy to it. It picks up on the vibration and it starts vibrating because it's come into contact with its natural resonant frequency. The sitar is the same way. There are 7 main strings. There are 13 sympathetic strings. When you start playing the 7 main strings, the others vibrate in sympathy and create the drone underneath it. So it's not anything new. It's been known for centuries. And the same thing works with your brain waves. The only problem is that, as I mentioned, your brain waves are below 20 hertz in general. Humans can only hear down, from about 20 hertz to 20,000, depending on your own, on the individual. And our brain waves go from 0 to about 40 in general, 50, and then there are some higher states of gamma and lambda, as I mentioned, that that can be experienced by people who do a lot of meditation and work to get into those states, like the Tibetan monks and some others. So you have to trick your brain into hearing those frequencies because they're so low, and you do that by using binaurals, which means you play one tone in one ear, let's say at 100 hertz, and say if you want to get the Schumann resonance at 7.3, then you put another frequency in the other ear at 107.3. Now that creates a dissonance. I don't know if you've ever played 2 notes next to each other on the piano and heard how it goes wah 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 wah, or if you hear a guitarist tune up and they hit a note on their 5th fret and then the next string and it vibrates, and when it stops vibrating it's in tune. Well, when it's vibrating, that's creating a brainwave entrainment frequency. And when you put one in one ear and one in the other of those 2 pitches, your brain perceives that wah, wah, wah as a frequency. It perceives it as that 7.3 hertz difference. And that's also what's known as the intervals, which are very important, and especially when it comes to what we were talking about in regards to the higher pitch, the more dissonant the intervals. Anytime you play 2 or more notes, you're going to get that vibrating dissonance, especially in equal tempered music. In perfect fifths, you don't get that as much. And what you do is a more pure and true interval for the brainwave entrainment that you want. If you remember the old episodes of MASH where Charles sits there with his headphones on, with his eyes closed, almost meditating, listening to classical music, and everybody else just wants to listen to jazz and dance around and get crazy, that's a real thing. The reason is that, music is intended for meditation and healing, and if you use the proper intervals, then that's what you're going to get. And if you tune to the standard tuning and you play rock and roll, then you're being convinced on a subconscious level that what's being said is true, and it really resonates with your bass aspects. If you think about how people dance to rock and pop and electronic dance music, it's it tends to be in a sexual or violent nature, and the way your body starts to move, and those are your base aspects, and so that's what it's hitting. And when you combine it with these negative entrainment frequencies that are convincing you that what you're hearing is true, when a 12-year-old listens to the same pop song on her headphones on repeat all day and then has a bad attitude at dinner, that's probably why. And the mom goes, that music's destroying your brain, and she's more right than she knows. So that's where the intervals and brainwave entrainment come in. And as far as the music we listen to on a daily basis, even just watching TV or a movie, you're going to be absorbing those negative frequencies that most people don't even notice. They're real subtle differences, but they're there. And sometimes people do notice, if you're drinking with your buddies and you're listening to a lot of loud punk rock, then, you notice people get more argumentative, and they, Maria Reynolds did tests on that with A440 and 432, and people always got more argumentative and confrontational after 440, but with 432, the conversations after the concert would be of spiritual matters, philosophical, people were laughing and having a good time. So she did it in hundreds and hundreds of experiments, and it never failed. So, the other way.
That's really interesting, the way that music and frequency, how they affect us. Right.
And I have, even my editor of my book, when she took the first class, she said, well, what about heavy metal? And I said, well, okay, I still like, Queens of the Stone Age. I know you still want to go home and listen to Black Sabbath, everything in moderation. Knowing is half the battle. So, most of us don't necessarily put that kind of music on to wake up to or go to sleep to or anything like that. But it's something to keep in mind to not, if you're on a long road trip or you're stuck in rush hour traffic, it might not be something you want to listen to when you're already aggravated, or when you're depressed. Maybe the blues isn't the best idea beyond one or two songs, because then you're just feeding into it. You're causing sympathetic vibration. You go from, being a little bummed out to extremely depressed to angry to violent. So it's just, again, in moderation and knowledge of what's going on. As long as you know and you use it for what it's for. And again, then in turn, doing a brainwave entrainment track or some type of attunement later, or at the end of the day, or when you meditate, is going to be beneficial to get you back on track and reattune your brain to its natural state after being exposed to those type of things all day.
Which I would assume is not just helps with our mental, trying to think of what I'm trying to use, our mental state of mind, but also our physical state of mind.
Right. Well, your mental state of mind affects your physical state of mind. And a lot of brainwave entrainment can be used in that way as well. I've mentioned, specific frequencies. I use actually beta, and certain frequencies can stimulate and increase the production and turnover of serotonin and pain-relieving beta endorphins. So I have a track that's about 20 minutes long, 10 minutes of each, and there are drugs that you can take that stimulate tonin production and turnover. There are drugs you can take that stimulate that make your brain release pain relief beta endorphins, but those all have side effects. So
just the same. I think I'd rather do it naturally.
Well, if you learn what those are and you get used to those frequencies in your head from working on them so long, I can pull them up like an old song I've heard for years. And in fact, I was filling in the kitchen at a bar restaurant with a buddy that lives downstairs and was the kitchen manager and needed somebody for Sunday nights. And I burned my finger on the stove. And I am the fill-in, there's nobody to call, and I had to just kind of run that frequency in my head over and over again. And it helped, I put ice on it when I could, but I obviously can't do that when I'm working all night and making people's food. So, I had to just keep running that in my head, and it helped to get rid of the pain. My mom used it when she had surgery. My roommate and buddy that works, with me back in Chicago, he uses it for his migraines, and, it tends to work with no side effects. So,
Did you record this? Do you have a
Sorry?
recording of it? Do you have a recording of it?
Oh, of that track?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I can send it to you. Yeah,
Is it on SoundCloud?
It is on SoundCloud, actually. I think it's one of the first ones that comes up, because I put it up. I think I had the 10-minute version on there and I replaced it with the 20-minute. So it's
now, if somebody was interested in doing this on SoundCloud, where would they go to get this?
You'd search F = 1/T. It was the formula for time travel given to George Van Tassel, who built the Integratron, by the aliens that landed allegedly. So, I just thought it was a cool formula, and that's what I do most of my recordings under. But if you search SoundCloud for F equals 1 over T, it actually, they wouldn't let me use the equal sign in the name, so it's technically F dash 1/T.
Right.
But you'll see it comes up, listed as Chicago, and it's just a black image of the formula written out. So it's pretty easy to find there.
Okay.
Also while you're at it, there's a good, friend of mine, he goes by on SoundCloud, it's WYZ-0NE, Wise1, and he's in South America, but he does a lot of stuff in just the A432 equal temperament, but he does a lot of just down-tempo electronic music. If you're looking for something to listen to for a nice background music for a dinner party or something like that, that's I recommend it, or just even to pass out to sometimes. He's got some great stuff on there. Lots of it. So.
I know you've got a blog.
Yeah, it was recommended that I start it. I mean, people have been telling me to do that since before I started writing the books, when I was just doing the talks and the sessions. But I've only published 2 things so far. I haven't really come up with much else. It slips my mind sometimes. I have a few drafts that I should probably revise and publish, but a lot of the stuff that I came up to put on there is kind of some of the more negative stuff that I didn't even put in the book so much, and I try to steer clear of some of the hoax stuff, and but a little more humorous than anything else. And the one on sound or the pitch, I just did as a response to the original article on retuning your music to 432, speaking of that and how you should and you shouldn't. It doesn't really do any good, and it might not be at 440 to begin with. So I just kind of did that in response to that. And
so is that the 13 myths of the tuning pitch debate?
Right. Yeah. And I mentioned to you too, I have a lot of people who will email or message me on Facebook, with a lot of questions, and I just figured it was for those people who obviously, and 9 times out of 10, the first thing I do is just send them a PDF of my book, at least the first one. They're asking me about pitch and things like that, and okay, here, just read this, and then they don't, and they keep asking me questions, and so that I thought was just kind of a way to send something to them or to put it out there that's in a little bit abbreviated, but to kind of get to the point a little bit quicker than the book, and maybe for some of those with a shorter attention span might be able to take in one sitting instead.
So, we had talked about that too, about you like I don't know if we want to call it advising, counseling, educating. What would you call?
I'd call it consulting, probably.
Okay, consulting. So Damien does do consultations, and you'll do a half hour for free, and then the rest is paid for by the minute.
Yeah, I know we talked about that the other day. I hadn't really come up with anything like that yet, but probably something along those lines. It does take its toll after a while, especially not everybody that I meet online is like that, of course, but I've had more than a few people who just kind of repeatedly ask the same questions, don't really listen to the answers. They don't really want to hear the answers, I guess. I get a lot of Eastern European people who are asking me questions about techno and electronic music and things like that, and what kind of tunings they should use, and questions like, what tuning is this DJ using? And I'm like, it's a DJ. He's not using anything except somebody else's record. I don't know what you mean. So it can get a little tedious at times with I would say it's a language barrier, and it's not so much English to other languages as it is musician to non-musician, or people who just don't quite understand a lot of the science behind it.
Plus
Makes
delivery
it
fee,
difficult
it's
sometimes.
$30.78.
What was that?
Somebody's got dinner. Somebody's got dinner there.
I guess.
Sorry.
Right on time. It's all right.
Colleen's got dinner.
Yeah.
I was going to
Like a
say
good plan.
All right,
about
so
that time, huh?
7:49. We don't have a whole, gosh, just 2 hours have gone by fast. We don't have a
Yep.
whole lot of time. If people want to contact you, oh wait, you do certifications. What type of certification do you do, and how can people get in touch with that?
Well, the first class, when I mentioned I had 15 people show up, I actually did it in 4 parts over 4 weeks. It was pretty extensive. We made the orgone transducer bulbs. Each of the students paid extra and got to make their own bulb. It was a 2-month thing, pretty much. I decided to cut that down a little because a lot of people travel from further suburbs or from other cities, and it was just a bit much for people to come all the way up. Then I started doing it in 2 classes, and then I kind of got it narrowed down to 1 day, but it generally takes about 8 hours to go through a class, and that's with some Q&A at the end and maybe a little bit of lunch break, or we'll do a potluck or something, but we generally keep talking through that. But people are going to want to do sample sessions of the sound and vibration therapy with the brainwave entrainment. I bring the EEGs. People get to see their brainwaves on the screen. There's a float the ball game, and you can float the ball with your meditation, or you can explode a barrel with your attention.
Oh, cool. I want to do that.
Yeah, I actually just got a hold of a float the ball that's an actual physical game. It's a track. It's about maybe 3 feet by a foot wide. You set up a little obstacle course and you float the ball with your attention rather than meditation, which is actually a little easier. You focus on it floating and it does, and you can make it go higher and lower and go around the track through the obstacle course. And it's a little foam ball that your brainwaves control the intensity of a fan that levitates it, and then there's a knob that moves it around the track left or right, but your brainwaves are controlling the height of the ball the whole time.
So how does that work? Are they hooked up to like a monitor type system?
Well, you put a headset on, and there's an electrode that sits on your third eye, and then there are, in the physical game I have, there are 2 clamps, one for each earlobe with electrodes on it, and the software version I have, it's just 1 clamp for your earlobe. And with that one, where you can see the actual EEG frequencies on the screen, or do the float the ball or explode the barrel game, if you clamp those electrodes to your fingers and do Reiki or energy, or you do an energy ball meditation, you'll see the frequencies, your bioenergy frequencies emitting, and you'll see it's the same frequencies, but different patterns. And oftentimes it's easier to float the ball with your hands than it is with your brain, especially for people who are Reiki attuned or energy practitioners. So it's pretty interesting. I show a lot of video clips in regards to the Integratron and bioenergy healing, things like that. Each student gets a very large folder. The Dropbox version is only 1 gig because that's the limit for a free version. So if you're doing the class online, you get that 1 gig, and then I'd have to email some additional stuff down the road. In class, the folder I'm giving out to students at this point is about 5 gigs with, documents, PDFs, videos, music. There's, 5 minutes each of all 12 notes in the, Cosmic Keyboard, the Maria Reynolds scale of 12/5, so you're set up to do sound therapies if you want. The low frequency tracks are in there, so if you do end up setting up a vibration system, they'll work for that. The brainwave entrainment's in there. So there's also programs. I teach people how to install G-Neural or Audacity for creating brainwave entrainment programs. In Audacity, you can do isochronic tones, which are just a pulsed beat, which relate to tempos as well. So I go into a lot of that. And we just kind of cover everything that's in the books and then some. Like I said, I got it down to about 8 hours, but it's good if the students, as soon as someone pays a deposit or they buy the online version, online you get everything all at once, but as soon as someone pays a deposit for a class, I send out the books right away and the charts so that they can kind of get familiar, and it saves us just a little bit of time in class, so I can just expand rather than starting from scratch.
So what kind of certification is this?
It has to do with a lot. I put a long list of what it is on the cert, actually, which I don't have right in front of me. As far as sound therapy, vibration therapy, brainwave entrainment, tuning fork therapy, I'm certified in tuning fork therapy through MSI Healing in Evanston. So I teach a few things about that as well. Crystal and orgone. I tell people how to make orgone transducers. People are interested in learning about how to wrap crystals, whether for pendants or for making orgone transducers. I teach people how to do that as well. It really goes into a lot of different areas. I show people how to, in addition to making the brainwave entrainment tracks, how to generate low frequency sine waves in Audacity, how to put together a sound therapy session, combine it with your live instruments if you want, singing bowls and tingshes, and some people have didgeridoos and drums of their own. They might want to incorporate and build their own session tracks to go along with it, or just do it all from scratch. So even learning how the isochronic pulsed waves work would tell you, how to play a drum to do the same thing, or even a bass or something like that. So it's really a pretty extensive class.
So to round it all out, would you say that it was like sound healing or frequency healing?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I call it the Solar Spectrum Sound Therapy Certification class. I had to kind of narrow it down a little bit for a title, but the Solar Spectrum does kind of sum it up, because I'm relating everything to the law of octaves, and even when it comes down to tempos in relation to the brainwave entrainment, and making sure there's no dissonance and that everything is as harmonious as possible. But it really does entail a large amount of history and some of these secrets that people think secret societies are hiding are actually pretty much in front of our eyes. They're there if you know where to look for it. I guess not in front of our eyes. That's why they would call it a cult, but it's not that hard to find if you have the time to research, which a lot of people don't. I've just again been blessed to have a lot of time to do the research and a lot of opportunity to experiment and try it out with other people and see what works and what doesn't. So what I found has been pretty effectual, and have had nothing but great feedback and results from it. So a lot of people, Reiki practitioners, want to know how to incorporate music into their practice. Once I tell them what the actual frequencies coming out of their hands are, they understand what might or might not be dissonant to that, and you don't want to overdo it or detract any from the actual song that's coming out of your own fingers and interacting with the other person. So it's, it goes into a lot of detail. There are musicians who just want to apply it to their art, and then there are studios and centers that want to incorporate the modalities and systems and want to be sure they're doing them in the most, efficient way possible, financially and, energy-wise. So.
Well, Damien, it's about time for us to say goodbye.
It is. I know,
Yeah.
it went quick.
It seemed like it's been that long, but it has.
Not at all. Yeah.
Before we go, I want you to give the listeners your information, so your email, however way you want them to contact you.
Sure. People are welcome to email me directly at Damien Keller, DameonKeller @gmail.com. Otherwise, the websites are through Wix, so it's damienkeller.wix.com/soundsgood. There's a accompanying site to the second book called at damienkeller.wix.com/soundsgreat, and you can find sound clips and all the CDs on there. There are samples for each CD on the SoundCloud, and at the bottom there's a link to get, if you want all of them at once, there's a buy all at once and get them for a deal type of thing at the bottom of the list. So you'll find clips and different examples of the scales and some of the stuff we talked about today. So if you're curious as to that, musicians can, and people curious can listen there as well. So.
You've been listening to It's Your Life, Live It to the Fullest. I'm your host, Joyce Wheeler. Today is Friday, June 10th, 2016. This is Will Spirit Radio, Haggy Shack Radio. We're listener sponsored, so click that donate button and show some love. My guest tonight has been Damian Keller. Damian, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been great, and I look forward to doing it again sometime.
Me too. Thank you. Good night.
Thanks. Good night.
You're listening to Wolf Spirit Radio.